Hey, welcome to Roleplay Cafe. It's Dale here. I'm going to do a recap of session 53 of the Chronicles of Joth, which we've entitled It's Only Goblins. Um, Now, Jason unfortunately couldn't attend. He was out of pocket. But where we had last left off, in particular, his character and my character, Martin and Nevin, were atop on the first floor, the ruins of a little keep, and Nevin had seen Martin breach up through the stairwell, and he had went over there in the previous session, and Martin took a swipe at him with a sword. Fortunately, he missed, but Nevin backpedaled away from him, didn't know exactly what was going on, and behind Martin, there was another creature, a king of the goblins, that had came up the stairwell as well, and he came out onto essentially what was the roof. So that's where we left off. Now, in this, where we pick up, everyone else essentially is in the lower hall, and they had cast, I think, George the liar had cast a spell, Entangle, which was entrapping all of the orcs that were trying to get through the double doors into the area where the majority of the party were. Now, whenever we left off, a couple of them had been outside, namely Lauren, and I believe Theana. Canada was still inside, yes, along with Hilda and George. Everybody was essentially focused and taking shots on the horde of goblins that were spilling into the room, right, and being entangled. So sort of a bit of a fish in a barrel, or that's how they were taking care of the problem. Now, when we pick up on this session, now my character Nevin, facing what he's facing, and he's only a thief, and he's only newly just came into this party and doesn't know Martin for anything other than the fact he just tried to take a swipe at him. He turns on his heel to run, finding some avenue of escape. And this is when he hits the edge of the building where he sees a little bit of rubble and a lot of handhelds, and decides to quickly try to get down that way. Now, the rest of the party have been taking pot shots, and the king of the goblins comes up to the edge of the first floor ruin, looking down upon the rest, and as well as Martin. But Martin, Nevin had seen, had these solid black eyes when he had looked at him, right? Which is part of the deal, that something was going on as far as Nevin was concerned to make him scat. He didn't want to be part of whatever that was, or being trapped in it himself. But the Goblin King had come to the edge and started to do semantic gestures and weave his spell with the incantations, and then throws it out. And he first cast something onto Lauren's bow, which Lauren and Theana both had tried to take a pot shot by way of initiative, and missed the Goblin King. And he casts his spell, and it turns Lauren's bow into this long writhing vine that entangles him and essentially puts him to the ground, incapacitates him. Now, I am getting off the building, and Theana has already tried to help Lauren break free, but I'm running past to do the same, but they break him free of his entanglement, and I run past because I'm making a break, or Nevin's making a break for the original stoneworks that they were hiding behind whenever they were viewing the scene that they were about to approach originally in the previous, before they even came up onto the little the hall, the keep. The church is essentially what it is, right? So he does this, and the goblins are also spilling out south of because they're bottlenecked in this area where they're trying to breach, and it's entangled. So they leave out the bottom area to try to circle around. The Goblin King howls to subdue them, capture them, after he casts his next spell, which is sleep. Successfully knocking unconscious Nevin, I believe at this point, Lauren, Hilda, Candle, and Theana. There were two of the party awake still. One of them I know, George, and George, by the time that he is trying to slap awake Hilda, the goblins are already to bear. They've already circled around and came in to attack, as well as the party that was in the open. As I said, Candle, Hilda, and George were inside of the church, inside of the building, holding the wall, as it were, or the thorned area, the entangled area, as they were trying to come in through the building. But the other detachment of goblins had circled around and came in the other way. So they get set upon, luckily escaping harm by miss rolls. And it was peculiar in the fact that there was a succession of miss rolls as the party, George in particular, was able to awake Candle and dislodge himself and get set to bear on attacking the goblins that were after him, and Hilda likewise. So earlier they had been able to dispatch the goblins quite spectacularly, but there was a series of miss before George finally connects and puts the one that had been harassing him down. Candle had left out and ran to Nevin, who was splayed out, spread-eagled in front of the rock outcropping on the further edge, trying to make it there. He didn't quite make it, and so Candle slaps him about to rouse him. Nevin gets behind the outcropping, and then Candle runs over there to slap awake Theana. By this time, the horde had, or the migraine of goblins had failed the morale check, and in face of their king, while he was overlooking, and they broke and ran south. Well, the rest of the party and the king disappeared from over the edge where he was onlooking. The rest of the party got up as they were all roused and entered the building again. Save Theana and Candle were on the outside, and Nevin himself. Now, Lauren and Hilda and George entered the building on the lower edge through where they had been, past the thorns into that area where the goblins had been, and it was basically a little goblin, uh, for lack of a better term, village. It was just several huts inside of the church, the hall there, and they began to look around, and then the other goblins that had some more goblins that had originally broke entered through the bottom and saw Lauren by himself and started attack. And this was before Hilda and George entered the room. He had already entered that southern room. Now Nevin, sawing them go in, and he paused for a turn to assess the situation as he overlooked with his bow and arrow, you know, primed at the ready, and he finally enters the upper area of basically the hall of the church, the main cathedral area, and looks in, and he can see some form that's slumped over the bottom of the um, stairwell leading up to the second floor, where he had encountered Martin and the Goblin King earlier. And he sees, or more or less hears, from the upper right-hand corner some noises. He waits a minute until it quietens down and rubbernecks in, and doesn't see anything. There's a lot of shadows and there's a lot of whatnot. He comes in and he tries to pick his way through. He was in wonderment that they would go back into the place instead of leaving initially. But then his greed, as he's a thief, got the better of him, and he didn't want to miss out on any potential treasure, which right here in the main cathedral he sees as holding the treasure. So he enters and looks around a bit and approaches the form that was laying over the slumped at the bottom of the stairwell. He discovers it's Martin and looks at Martin and reels back, and then notices Martin's eyes aren't black. You know, he had drawn his dagger immediately when he saw who it was, right? But the figure, Martin's unconscious. Now, Theana and Candle had watched Nevin enter the place, and so they go up to it, but they enter through the southern way, through the area that was previously entangled, right? That's where it had happened, and that's where Lauren and Hilda and George had entered. Anyway, so they was following the bulk of the party. Nevin was up in the main little cathedral area, but its doors were barred off into the main foyer, the entry point where the rest of the party was engaged in combat with these reinvested goblins that had came into the area. So they're dispatching them fairly quickly, and then the goblins break yet again and turn tail and run out of the building. Now, at this point, they go over and check the last room, which seems to be like a horde that the goblins have cobbled together of all this junk, essentially, bits and pieces and some armaments and whatnot. They see this and don't really go into too much of a delve into searching the area. The Theana and Candle rejoin with them, and they mentioned that they saw Nevin, my character, go into the upper chamber. So they backpedal and go to the main door, but it's barred. Now, Nevin had already drawn his sword when he saw Martin laying there, but he sees him unconscious. And so Nevin, being a bit spiteful, resentful at least, that Martin had taken a swipe at him, he said, "Take a swipe at me, you bastard." And instead of slitting his throat, obviously, he just cuts his coin purse loose from his strappings. He takes the coins and throws the coin purse away, and he's got this little inclination to take his boots and just look after him further whenever he hears the knock on the door of the main chamber. He goes to it, who's on the other side, and then he hears Lauren's voice. We are. And so he removes the barrier. They come in, and he feigns a little bit that he was there, and he had noticed Martin in the corner, but be careful, Martin had taken a swipe at him. He didn't know of his persuasion. He was unconscious. They go over there and rouse Martin, but he's a little bit too out of it to be aware, cognitively aware. So he sits there, and they lay him out on one of the pews. And they asked if I'd seen anything, the Goblin King or anything, and Nevin had heard something up in the corner toward where there was a break in the wall and some bushes leading out to the upper northwest corner, upper left corner from where we were standing. And so they go up there to examine it. Lauren does. No, I think George does. And he sees the bushes where there's a entrance down into a hole. He lights a torch and drops it in there, and it's only about 5 foot deep. He gets down in there and finds that there is a clay jar. It's full of coins. There's about another area that delves down about 5 foot or goes down about 3 foot wide by 5 foot deep. A little incline. It goes down a little bit, but nothing further. Now, Kendall goes around where the altar is and finds that there are some dirtied, inset, precious gems, what appears to be inside of the stone throne altar. It looks kind of cobbled together anyway, but there are some stones there. He checks for traps. And while he's checking for traps, Lauren walks around, and underneath the stairwell, there's a shadowed area. And he gets this on a roll of 1. He notices something. And he walks up to it, and he doesn't take any chances. He rolls. And when he does, he hits with a 22 and 10 points of damage. And he hears a bellowing, and out steps the Goblin King, who curses him and takes a swipe at him. I believe he hits him for a little bit of damage, and Lauren recounts. And the rest of us, my character, Nevin, pivots around to the other corner with his bow drawn to take a look at what's going on, but it's in the shadows. Then Lauren takes another swipe and hits him again for the same amount, 10. And this breaks the Goblin King. Unloosens his entrails as they spill out and hits his knees and falls over, and so does Lauren, as far as falls on his rump and sits there and like, where were you all? He just dispatched this Goblin King. So he's King Slayer now. He's racking up quite the accolades rather. And he sees them, and at this point in time, Kendall's still up there trying to. She finds no traps and is able to start working on the gems, taking those out. Right. Hadn't even raised her head up from what was going on. Nobody seemed to notice it was in the little corner down there, except for Nevin. And we go help Lauren up to his feet, and he looks down, and around the waist of the Goblin King is an agleted uh, rope that's been wrapped around a couple of times, right? So he looks at it and then undoes it gingerly to his description and pulls it free. And it looks like, to all of our minds, this questing object that we've been after, uh, which is the rope of unburdening. And he pulls that free, and we gather that. So at this point in time, Candle has dislodged one of the precious gems, and we hear a rumble, and then the the work that she has done has triggered what appears to be some stone golem that is rising from the ground, which I don't know necessarily if this part that she pulled it from is part of this golem, this stone elemental, as it were. We've yet to really see, but that's when everybody's focus turns and switches to it as it rises up out of the broken ground fully to tower above us in this cathedral, in this little chambered area. So that's where the curtain was drawn. Great session, and can't wait for the next one. It was interesting. Just a little reflection about the series of roles, because there was moments where the party had really strong roles, especially in the latter half where Lauren was dispatching what he did, and in an earlier time where you see a little bit of a kind of a Gimli Legolas contest between the impending lovers of George and Hilda, trying to one up each other. And there was a point where they tried to get into the other room that had all the array of stacked junk that they were to find. Well, the door, George tried to open it, it was stuck, and Hilda kind of scoffs at him, bemused, and walked over there and let me show you how to do it, and it's stuck for her. So they've just been having this competition where they've been waylaying these goblins earlier in the room, and they walk in, and then they both are buffeted. She was going to one up him, and then in walks the small 4'8" Candle and walks by them, and she's a thief with a little finesse, and well, like I jokingly said, she just turns the knob in the correct counterclockwise motion and opens the door right in front of them. So that was a little bit of moment of humility, and a little bit of a shared moment for those two characters to almost laugh at themselves in a way, and what had been done. So maybe it could draw them two closer, you know. Everything can't be approached with brute force, as it were. But yeah, Kendall opened the door for him. So at the end, it did take and heal a good bit of HP back into Lauren, who had been put down. And when he got hit by the goblin, I think he got hit by 7 points or 6 points, and she healed him for 7 previously, which hurt him. If that wasn't the case, if Theana hadn't healed him, I don't know if Lauren could have survived taking that hit while he was fighting the Goblin King, because he hit the Goblin King for 10, then he got hit, then he hit the Goblin King for 10 again, which took him out. So 2 critical blows of the Goblin King took him out. But without that, he might have been the one disemboweled when the Goblin King hit him. on the second round, and he had missed. Anyway, great game, and I'll let y'all go. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye.